And I invite you to take a breath, conscious breath, to just release anything what was there before. And to breathe in this present moment. Hi, and welcome. Thank you for being here. I invite you to lean back and to close your eyes. And to take this next conscious inhale. And to observe how your body is instantly responding in that very moment. And this response might be a move, and I invite you to move, to allow yourself to move your body. And that might be anything. This is not something that or that. Allow any move where your body is speaking to you. And that might be visible or it might be invisible. There is no right or wrong. Just observe what happens when this speaking from your body is heard by your listening. And I invite you to allow some things which you might not allow usually. When your body asks to stretch, when there is the impulse to yawn, you're muted. When there is the impulse to have a voice, allow it and have a look what happens with you listening when you listen to yourself first. And I invite you to breathe deeply in your 10 out of 10 listening for yourself. To listen to yourself without any judgment, as you want others to listen to you without judgment. And breathe deeply in and have this one move, this one stretch, this one yawn, this one voice, just like a. And then at the end of the exhale, open your eyes and feel this presence. Thank you very much, Amy. Thank you for being here, for being our host today. And I hand over to you. I love you.
Love you too. Today we have Ankush here, and here's what I want to say about Ankush. I read his bio, which is awesome. And also, if I try to read that, I'm going to get all tongue twisted because that's not how I roll. I got to go from the spirit. So here's what I know about Ankush. He is very conscious driven. He's on a mission. He really does want to bring consciousness to the men in the world and to coaches. He wants coaches to see a different way of coaching. Like there's this thing that's been happening in the coaching industry where everybody is trying to get and do, and they've kind of forgotten how to be. And he's really tapped into what it means to be a coach, to really be of service, to not just try to get from people or not to try to prove something to people, but to really just be service, to just show up as love. And that when we do that, there's this miracle that happens. There's this space that opens up where clients can really like go to the next level, where they can really let go of whatever that thing is that's been holding them back, because there's this safe space that's been created by him that allows them to think outside the box, that allows them to do something different, that allows them to see something different and how they've been being, and the difference between, if they can just change their being, then everything else will shift. And it's not really about the other. It's not really about what they're doing as much as how they're presenting themselves to be. And that shift changes everything. And he also recently just wrote a book called The Coach Within that I highly recommend you guys get and read. There is so many golden nuggets in there. There's so much heart-centered stuff in there. So um, he's just presence. If that's the main thing that comes across with me, is he's very present with you. He's very heart-centered. He's genuinely with you. And that makes the difference. And so I'm going to turn it over to you now, Ankush.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you for the introduction. And you know, I've shared this a few times, but I was listening to this audio by Werner Erhard, and he says this beautiful. I mean, he's so smart, that dude. He was talking about the distinction, the guy in a diner distinction, and it just came up again as you were speaking. And he spent a long time on this in this particular audio, which was like, I don't want you to believe me. You don't have to trust me. I'm not saying I know the truth. I'm not saying I know everything. Um, but I'm inviting you into an exploration of what might be here. And at the same time, he says, I'm not a guy in a diner. And how he explained was, in America, you have all these like diners everywhere, and there's always some guy there at 11 o'clock at night who knows everything about everything. He'll know what the president should do. He should know what the foreign policy should be, right? Basically saying they have a strong opinion about stuff, but they're not really qualified. And so what he was saying is, I'm not saying I know the truth, but this whatever he was saying was not coming from someone who's completely unqualified. And I was thinking of that as you're speaking, because on one hand, I I'd like to think I'm not arrogant enough to think that I know, and even what you shared about with coaches, I can't speak for all coaches because I know a tiny fraction. I interact with a tiny fraction of the coaches in this profession. There were estimates from 100,000 to several 100,000 coaches on the planet, as well as those people who coach without a formal title of coach. So I'm going to only see a tiny snapshot of that. So I'm really an expert in what I know, and I'm not a guy in a diner that there is some qualification to what I'm saying. I have been coaching now for 13 years. I've worked with some of the best people in the world, Steve Chandler, Steve Hardison, and many coaches and mentors before I even became a coach. Um, and one of the biggest impacts on my own personal journey has been the creation of my document. Um, it, and those people who followed me on social media, it's kind of obvious. It was really obvious. I did that in 2022. So at the time of this recording, just over 3 years ago, it was really clear if you were just watching my posts, something's happened to this guy. Like he's not the same guy. Something's changed. Something's occurring differently. And I had people message me and tell me this. These weren't people who were clients. These weren't people I had a lot of interaction with. But just from the tiny, like when we see someone's Facebook post, we see like a tiny fraction of what's really going on for them. But even from that, people started noticing something different. So it was really obvious over here, right? But even to people who are more loosely connected to me, it was obvious that something's occurred. And it's been a sustained occurring. It's not something like I got a seminar high or a boost of something and then that's it. Something's really shifted for me. And I don't know if this is still true, so I'll say this, but about a year after I created my document, you know, uh, my coach said to me, you get this deeper than anyone else at this moment. Don't get cocky, right? Um, anyone can overtake that. There's still like there's 100 lap race, and we're at the end of lap one, so there's loads to go. But because basically you get this pretty deeply. So I again I take that not as a arrogant thing, but like, okay, I understand a bit over here, and that's continued to evolve over the last couple of years. So there's no way in today's call I can go through the process of creating a document and do it any kind of justice. When I create documents with people now, I have done it in shorter times. I can do it in a few hours, but I really like to do it over, a longer period of time and work with people in a deeper way, so that it's something that is sustainable and makes that difference for them. But I want to share a few things to highlight to me what the document is, and really why it's so transformative, and maybe shed light on some things that people might not be aware of or might have misinterpreted. And I'll also say this: I was a skeptic. I did a Be With session with Steve Hardison in 2021. We did not talk about the document. I didn't create a document. There was no talk of a document. I knew he created documents with people. I was curious, and also there was part of me that didn't want to do it because I felt it went up against my three principles coaching and training, and it was some kind of technique. I really wasn't interested in affirmations. And when I heard him and other people say this isn't affirmations, I was like, that's just, verbal, jujitsu or something. It is, they're just trying to say it differently. That was my listening. And then I paid Steve Hardison $45,000. I fly to Phoenix, and he goes, basically, we're going to create our document today. And he said it in a very strong way, right? And so I was aware in that moment, there's no refunds. I've paid the most money I've ever paid for, per session, if you like, for coaching sessions. Um, I, let's test this, right? Like, what have I got to lose? And also in my head, I was like, if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna really throw myself into it. It's really no point to do this, half-assed. If I'm gonna do it well, and give Steve the opportunity to help me do something really well. And then if it doesn't work, then I can say, well, it doesn't work, and the way I was doing things was better. Or maybe I'll take a few nuggets, but I don't want to hamper him. That doesn't make sense for him or for me. So we start the process, and like I say, it was very unusual for me. And what surprised me was how the creation of the document was built on really understanding that I had a document already. And I'll say this, everybody has a document. Everyone listening to this on the replay or live, all of you all have a document. And your document is the predominant way you think about yourself. And a lot of it is unconscious, right? If we were to take a can opener or open up your head, and we were able to look into your brain and look into what are the beliefs, ideas, and thoughts you have about yourself. Steve Hardison called them non-useful listenings. If we could have a look at that, I'm guessing for most people, I'm not saying all of it, but there's a lot of that isn't what we might call positive. A lot of it is kind of harsh and unkind. And this isn't true for, someone who might be struggling, right? I've seen this for the top leaders, in massive organizations. I've never gone through this process with somebody and seen that, oh, the more successful someone is, the less of this they've got going on. It's really not. And it used to surprise me. It doesn't surprise me anymore. So for all intents and purposes, everyone's got this going on, right? And I had it going on. Now, outwardly, I remember in 2014, was it 13 or 14? I was in London. I can't remember if this is in the new book or not. And I had a friend come over who then ended up being one of my early clients. And he saw me living in central London. It was a flat share, but I was renting this flat in a like really nice flat. It was 2014. And he kind of was like, wow, dude, you've made it. You got this great job. You know, you're living in central London. You know, it's a nice place. And inside, I was like, he's got no idea. I really, really didn't like my boss, right? I was working so hard trying to get my coaching practice off the ground, and I was struggling with it. It was taking far longer than I anticipated. Um, you know, and I had a lot of judgment on myself, and I was dropping stuff. I was going through massive transformation that year as well, but we don't see that, and so um, I would say that for all intents and purposes, this is what's going on with everyone now. Um, Being is the seed, as they say, being is the seed of all doing, right? So whatever you do comes out of who you're being, right? It can't not. That and again, a lot of people don't understand what being is. But being is the ultimate experience, we might say. For me, I call it the ultimate barometer, right? Who am I being right now? Am I being judgmental? Am I being kind? Am I being loving? Am I being lazy? Am I being tenacious? Am I being determined? Am I being, you know, whatever, right? And the document is the seed of our being, right? You could say your default document is the way that you think about yourself, the default way you think about yourself. So if that's the seed, right? Like if you have an idea or a belief about yourself that um I'm I'm a bad partner, right? I'm a bad spouse, or I'm you know, what is my husband or wife? What are they doing with me? What's my girlfriend or boy? What are they doing with me? If they knew me, if they knew what I was really like, they wouldn't be with me. I think that's really common, right? I see in relationships early on, people don't tell the other person what they really like. I don't want to scare them off. I don't want them to know what I'm really like. And then it's hard because then the person's fallen in love with the image you've presented about yourself, right? And it reinforces this thing. Now, if you have that going on for you, hey, I'm not a good spouse, I'm not a good partner, there's no way that doesn't come out in how you are with that person. You'll actually live into that. And if you have the opposite going on, then it gives you a certain kind of resilience in a relationship. It gives you a power because you've got that seed from which all of your doing comes from. So um, now here's what's interesting. People are so powerful that you can have a horrible default document and still do well in the world, right? I've seen people who have done really, really well externally. They're married, kids, great job, great business, right? And deep down, the thinking they have about themselves isn't good. And that's their system. Hey, if I really talk shit to myself, then I'm going to force and motivate myself to do well. It's very stressful. But what I say to those people is, hey, you've created all of this amazing stuff in your life through this. It's like driving with the handbrake on a little bit or never getting out of second gear. Imagine if you realized you could put the handbrake down, or imagine there's all these other gears you can move through. Imagine what you could create. So I don't think we can overestimate the power of the document. I really think that I still see, and again, I might be wrong, but when I look around, I still think most people right? And hear this about you, right? Are underestimating the power of the document. And I would ask you, where are you underestimating the power of the document? I'm asking myself, where am I underestimating the power of the document? It's so, so, so powerful. It's foundational. When I create documents with my clients, I'll sometimes give the example of the Burj Khalifa, which I believe is still the tallest building in the world. At a certain point in time, it won't be. So if you're watching the replay, maybe it's not anymore. But it's a really, really, really tall building. I think it's something like a mile tall. And the foundations of that building are something like 3 stories deep. I think the foundations cost millions of dollars, just the foundations. Because if you're going to build something really big, you got to have a strong foundation. Now, if your foundations aren't strong and you build a bungalow, if you build a 1 story building, it's going to fall down. So, in the same way for ourselves, if your foundation isn't strong, it's much harder to build. And you can build something that looks good from the outside, but how many times have, and I think everyone's got an example of this, the couple that you know that seemed amazing, and then 20 years later they split up, and you're like, but you guys were the perfect couple. And then it all comes out, well, no, we've been fighting for years. No one knows. People present the image they want the world to see. But that's the foundational piece. That's the beingness that's going on behind the scenes, right? One of the bits of feedback that I've had, I mean, it's only been a few days right now that the new books come out, but one of the bits of feedback I've had is, it's really raw, it's really vulnerable. I'm sharing stories that aren't flattering. Well, I started writing the book years ago, and there would have been some of that in there. I tried to be vulnerable, but I think having taken longer to write the book, I'm much more comfortable with those stories because I don't see myself like that anymore. It's actually easier for me to be vulnerable because who I create myself to be every day is not my mistakes or who I was, or I'm not judging myself. So I can say, yeah, I messed up over here, or that didn't go well, or I used to think this. There's nothing on that. So it's kind of like the opposite of what I used to do, which I think what a lot of people do. So the document is a way that we get to, it's a technology, it's a you could say it's a tool to consciously create ourselves in the world. I'm going to say that again because to me, I think people really overlook how massive that is, right? Your document is a way to consciously create yourself in the world. You're not reliant on your default thinking. I thought that I have thoughts, they come up into my conscious awareness, and sometimes they don't, and I can't do anything about it. They're just there. And when I used to use affirmations, it was like, trying to cover up, cracks in the wall or something with wallpaper. It was like a surface level fix. This is not that. Your document is a way to completely reshape your identity, your self-image. I mean, that's amazing. I don't mean to labor the point. It's amazing, right? Imagine that. Imagine I could go back. I think about this for me. Imagine I could go back to when I was 12 years old and change my self-image. How different would my life have turned out? And I can clearly think of so many examples where it would have altered the course of my life. Now, I don't regret anything. I mean, these are the lessons. I am who I am today because of what happened. But I can see, wow, when I was 18 years old in the UK, we do A levels. And I did my A levels and I missed out on the university of my choice. No one knows this. This isn't in the book. I don't think I've ever spoken about this. I missed out on the university of my choice by 1 grade. And my dad, who was a massive proponent of education and he wanted me to do well, he drove me like 2 hours to the university. And I was like, Dad, what are you doing? This is so embarrassing. And he's like, no, we're going to go and see the admissions to you. I don't know how. We get a meeting with the guy. We actually managed to get into the office of this guy who's in charge of which students come in. And we're sitting down with this guy, and my dad's trying to convince him, like, hey, take my son in, and he's only missed out by one grade, and we had some exceptional circumstances in those couple of years, which could explain some of why I didn't get the grades I was predicted. And he had a lot to say. And then the guy, I still remember this, and my dad was like kind of bigging me up. This guy was kind of knocking me down, right? And he goes, and he turned to me and he goes, and he looks across the table and he goes, "Why should we let you into the university?" And in that moment, well, I had to sell myself. Knowing what I know now, I could have looked him in the eyes and say, "Hey, one of the best things you can do is have me in your university. You'll want to have me as a graduate from your school because I will be a credit to your university." And I'm not just talking as a student, I'm talking about what I'm going to do in the world, right? I would have spoken that boldly and it would have been true. But what did I think about myself? I thought I was useless. I thought I was faking it. I thought I'd got it, I was just trying to get away, tread the waters that no one would find out how stupid or idiotic or whatever I am, unworthy. So I don't know what came out of my mouth, but I'll tell you right now, it wasn't very convincing. And guess what? I didn't get into the university. Luckily, I got into my second choice university. And in the UK, they grade your university degrees, a pass is basically a third, then higher than that is a two, higher than that is a 2-1, and a small percentage will get a first class degree. I got a first class degree from my second choice university. So I can see back now, this isn't bravado. I can see if I'd got into that first choice university, there's no way I would have failed. I can't go from a first in a very similar degree course at a very good university to failing. And would I have got a first there? I don't know. I'm pretty sure I would have done pretty well. But the self-image I had got in the way. And I'm telling you all now, there are times if we sat down, if we could plug your brain into some electrodes and we could map out your life, and you'd have some big computer program, we could zoom in on different areas, we'd find stories like that in your life where, you asked that girl out and she said no, and you just, yeah, why would she go out me? Life goes in a different direction, right? You go for the job and they're picking between you and someone else, and they go, well, tell us why we should offer it to you and not the other person, and your old document comes out, right? Or you have a disagreement with a friend, or someone does something to upset you, and your ego kicks in, and you know that you should be forgiving and let it go, but you don't, and you ruin a friendship or relationship. There's so many examples of this, right? You start a diet, but the thought you have in your head is, I'm unhealthy, I'm unfit, I never stick to anything. That takes over, and then you don't stick to your diet. Your life, if we look at what your default document is, and then we look at your life, it's going to be a match. There's no way around it, right? So I'm looking at some of my notes from I haven't looked at these for ages, but these are the notes that I took in my session with Steve. And I've got a question: how do you create a consciously occurring world, right? It's the language that you speak, think, write, and respond with. That starts with your document. Now, some people think this is bravado. Some people think we are building up our ego. It's actually the opposite. And I'm not so arrogant to not care about what people think. I don't want people to think that. I hope that through this and through my work, people will realize I'm not saying I'm better than anybody. I'm really not. I had someone ask me once, hey, how can you say you're the best? How can you say you're the better? You're saying you're better than other people. And I said, no, you are. You're interpreting what I'm saying through your document. I go, I'm not. I love it. I have a client, and he said to me the other day, and I helped him create his document. He said, I'm the best men's coach in the world. right? I love that. Now, I run coaching programs for men. I've got other clients who run coaching programs. It's not a case of I'm better than you, right? But it's a place to come from, right? We remember little kids. My son started to grow out of this now, but a year or two ago, you'd ask him, and let's say he was with 10 other kids, who's the best at drawing? Me. There's no hesitation. There's no ego in there. There's no arrogance in that, little kids. It's pure innocence. It's a place that they come from. Who's got the best mom in the world? Me, right? It's beautiful. That's what we're pointing to. And for me, the creation of the document was so healing because a huge part of it is self-forgiveness. We take all this old thinking and we really heal it. And the work is, if it's not healed, you keep going back to it. So it's not like a one and done thing. If things are coming up, I've gone back and stuff has come up, and I'll forgive myself for that as well. But really, I could say the creation of the document was a process of me really loving myself for the first time. And it gave me a reference point for that. So when I love me, it's the most powerful place to come from. And I'll tell you something, I wouldn't change that for anything. Have you ever heard the things, you see this in movies? Hey, I've been a poor person, I've been a rich person. Let me tell you, it's much better to be a rich person, right? We've heard these things, right? Well, I've been a person who hated myself and I've been a person who loved myself. Let me tell you something, it's much better to be a person who loves themselves. And I would wish that for everyone. I really do. I think if the one thing that we changed was to raise the self-esteem of every single person on this planet by 5%. I'm not even saying like completely change it. I'm not saying even have everyone have a document. If we raise the self-esteem of everyone on the planet by 5%, like tiny little bit, we'd have a different world. It would not be a small difference. It would be shocking how different it would be. We would live in a different planet. Let me put it a different way. I have a goal and a desire to help 1 million men have a consciously created document, right? I have some ideas. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it, but I have this goal. Now, one of the things I know is if we had 1 million people who actually have that, 1 million men, and it could be people, I just do that because I do a lot of men's work, right? But if we had 1 million people who had a consciously created document, again, the impact on the planet would be phenomenal. How do I know? Because I've maybe helped 40 or 50 people consciously create their documents, and there's 5 or 10 who really get it. And when I look at those 5 or 10, the impact that they're having on the world is not small. It's unbelievable. It's not about pumping yourself up. It's not about, pumping up the ego. It's really, to me, it's going back to who we are at our essence, who we truly are, like who we were as children, that perfect, complete whole, right? Now, I'd like to think this community is more conscious and aware. So I'm assuming the answer to this question is going to be no, right? But if you imagine any child that is 3 years old, 4 years old, could you hate a child that's 3 or 4 years old? And can anyone, like, I'm assuming the answer is going to be no. Could you hate a child that's 3, 4 years old? Right? It's really hard to imagine that. Right? Could you judge a child that's 3, 4 years old? You could get frustrated, but you couldn't judge a child. They're innocent, right? Guess what? You were once 3 or 4 years old. That was you. There's no exceptions. There's no one who wasn't once 3 or 4 years old. If you're an adult, right? If you're older than 3 or 4, you were once 3 or 4. So you were all at one stage that perfect, innocent little being. And it doesn't matter if you're now 24, 34, 44. 104, whatever. It doesn't matter what age you are. There's no limit to when you start consciously creating yourself. It doesn't matter. You'd had 50 years of judging the crap out of yourself. It doesn't matter. You can consciously create yourself now. And when you do, you basically tap into that essence of who you were as a child, that pure perfection, and create from that. And let me tell you something. People are going to think you're crazy. Not everyone, but people will think you're crazy. Who are you to say that? How can you say that? I don't take this stuff seriously at the same time, right? So one of my lines in my document is, I am that I make being Indian sexy. It's a fun line, right? Am I there going, yeah, well, I'm going to enter the sexiest Indian man in the world contest, and I'm going to win. No, it's fun. It's a fun creation. And I have got a photograph on my Facebook of the day that that was first uttered. I know because Eric Thurison, who some people know in this community, he met me after my session with Steve Hardison, and he took a photo of me outside Steve's house, and I've got that photo. And I tell you now, I look at that photo, which was 3 years ago, and just over 3 years ago, and I look at me now, and let me tell you something, right? I would expect 99.999% of people in the world would say, yeah, you look sexier now than before. It started up here. It was a way of being. It was a creation. I didn't used to think that. I used to think I was ugly. I used to think I was unattractive. Like being sexy was so far away from what I thought of myself as. And I create it, and then I start living into it, and I just start having fun with it. And then and it didn't happen immediately. It didn't even like a year in. I remember I started going through this massive body transformation as I start living into my document. And I remember I start seeing my abs, and I'm like, wow. And I start getting a six pack. And there were moments where I could still feel my old document come up, right? Yeah, but you're not attractive. This won't stay, you know? I just kept forgiving myself for that. I kept consciously creating who I am. And then at a certain stage, I just realized I really love my body. And not again, it's not ego or arrogance. And I noticed something. My personal trainer said to me, and I'm in a gym, it's a weightlifting gym. There's really, really impressive bodies in there. People really strong, really great shape. And my PT said to me, goes, most people in here have some form of body dysmorphia. They can be in great shape, they can have an incredible physique, and they're like, I don't like this, I don't like that. He goes, you don't. And don't get me wrong, it's not to say I might not like bigger muscles. I'm working on it. I'm trying to create a certain kind of physique. But I had this 2 years ago. I'd look in the mirror. I'm like, this is the best I've ever looked. Can you believe this is me? Wow. I get so excited. Right. A year ago, I'd look at it and go, oh my God, this is so cool. I've never looked like this. This is amazing. Now, don't get me wrong. I can look at the guy next to me and go, yeah, his physique is, you know, better than mine. The guy I train with, he's got an amazing physique. And sometimes I go away, go and stand over there. I don't want you standing next to me. I like admiring myself, but when you're standing next to me, I don't look so good. Right. But it's all fun. And I like how I look. And and it's true, you talk to my buddy who's amazing. What does he say? Oh, I don't, he looks in the mirror. I don't like how I look. I wish my arms were bigger, or I wish my chest was bigger. I wish this was different. I wish that was different. So even in fun, even in jest, it's like I want to create myself. I don't want to be saying, I don't like this, I don't like that. And again, imagine the world got that. I can imagine a lot of makeup companies would probably go bust. Botox clinics would go bust, most likely, right? Um, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it would change everything. It really would. So as you can tell, I'm really, really passionate, and I've hardly even touched the surface of of what I was going to say. Language creates the occurring world. Language creates our world, right? Anything you have in language creates the occurring world. And then you take these actions based on the occurring world. There's loads I could talk about, but I'm curious, are there any questions from the group? Is there anything that anyone has? Wolfgang, you got your hand up straight away.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I mean, I had no expectation about today, and just you sharing. I don't know. I felt you the most close today, like from where you were speaking from, and thank you for that. So that is very, very important for me personally. And I have a question. What was the hardest that you fell off being consistent about your document? How did it feel? What happened? Why did you stop?
Yeah, I say my document every single day. I say it twice a day. There may have been a few times where, maybe I've been traveling, I've been in the air, and I may have forgotten to say it. But as soon as I remember, I say it. I endeavor to listen to my document, 4 or 5 different versions of it every day. Um, Rarely there are times when that doesn't happen, but it's very, very consistent. Um, because I know how important it is. But I'm not going to lie, like there have been times, but I'm very, very consistent. I keep returning to that. Um, and it's to me, it's like the gym, right? I used to be very inconsistent in the gym years ago, and it's so important to me now that I create a system where I'm able to be consistent. And so the document is very important to me, so I create a system that helps it be consistent. So I've never fallen off it in that way. And I went through a period, um, in fact, early this year, where I was speaking my document, I was listening to my document, and and it was like, oh, the document's not working, right? All the benefit of the last 3 years, suddenly it stopped. And I sat down and it suddenly occurred to me, I've I've got a lot of judgment coming up. So I sat down and I wrote down my judgments. And they were all coming up like, really, I'm not going to do that. I am this, I'm not that. And it was like ten statements came up. And so I did what I did. I forgave each statement one at a time. I did the work. And I realized that every single one of them was made up. And from those statements, new statements came out. And I haven't incorporated them into my main document. I haven't felt the need to, but for a little while, temporarily, I started saying those statements. But I also say this, I'm a really big fan of stability with your document. I remember speaking to Steve Hardison about this. He's been doing documents for like 40 years. He goes, I'm on my fourth version of it in 40 years. They would typically last a decade. He wasn't someone for chopping and changing all the time. And I see my document, you can't see it, but it's up on my wall in my office. And the first line of that document is I'm loved and I'm loving. That could be my whole document, right? I'm loved and I'm loving. Well, how do I apply that to my body? I work out, I eat well, right? I've got other lines which talk to that, but it could have just been that line. I'm loved, I'm loving. That changes how I am as a father and as a husband, as a son, as a sibling. There's no part of my life that that first line doesn't touch. And if I only had that line, it's a mountain without a top of living into that, right? So the document is really practical. Let me say this, the
Mhm.
document isn't, hey, I say my document twice a day and then my life is going to change. No, it's very practical. So if I take I'm loved and I'm loving, I have that, and this is real, right? Yesterday I find out something, right, where my initial reaction was hurt, right? Where someone had judged me, right? And so I have a choice now. Do I be loved and loving, or do I respond from judgment? Guess what? I choose loved and loving. How can I be really loving and just say, well, I'll just put that down to a lapse in judgment. It doesn't matter, right? It's easy to be loving when people are being loving towards you, but can you be loving when they're not? That's the work. And that's everywhere. And I mean, this is in every single little thing. My neighbor used to really annoy the hell out of me because I felt he was very petty. And I had and I could tell you the stories. Can you believe? And I think most people, if I told you the story, I could enroll you in my version of the story, and you go, "Yeah, that sounds pretty petty." It doesn't matter. And I started going, whereas my neighbor on the other side was really nice. And I'd sometimes, if I go to London, I'd get cakes, I'd go and take him a cake, we'd chat. And I started doing that to the other guy, not because he deserved it, not because it doesn't matter. I'm being who I'm being regardless. And it changed our relationship. There was a lady in the gym and she was, she kind of would come in when we're working out. And, I've got a personal trainer, I've paid for that, I'm having my time and I've got to be in and out in an hour. I've got a lot to do. And then she would kind of come in and start training with us and then taking over the equipment and she'd ask for help. And it started, I found myself getting really annoyed by it. Right. And I did the very British thing of being passive aggressive. Right. Thinking she's going to take the hint. And then she did, but it really soured things, before I'd say hello and good morning. And then, she didn't want to talk to me. I didn't want to talk to her. And then one day I'm walking out of the gym. I'm like, are you being your document? No, that's not being loving. So then, now she doesn't like me. I started saying hello to her again. And she could ignore me. But every time I see her now, I say good morning. I found out that her parents died. It's so sad. I found out her parents died. Other people don't want to talk to her because she kind of hangs on to them and tries to get them to help them. And a lot of people have said the same thing as me. But I went up to her and I said, hey, I heard about your parents. I'm really sorry about your loss. Not because I'm cool. Oh, look at me. I don't mean that. This is just for me. I'm doing things that I wouldn't have done. I'm making a conscious choice. And so when I do that with the neighbor, when I do it with her, and I do it everywhere in my world, like I stop, that's the barometer. I'm being different. And so when I'm being different, being different, being different over time, I'm really reinforcing this new self-image that I'm creating. I'm being someone who's more loving. So compared to 3 years ago, yeah, I am more loving than I used to be. Way, way, way more loving. Am I perfect? No, but I'm way more loving. I have a line. I'm a master of self-discipline, right? Now, 3 years ago, you could have found lots of examples where that was true, and you could find a bunch of examples where it was not true. If you look at it now, you can find many more examples where it's true than it was. And I mean that every single place? No, that's the work. Keep stepping into being it more, being it more, being it more. So, um, really, the creation of a document is just the beginning. The work, if you like, the real power of the document comes from living into it every single day. And there's so many ways to do that, and it's not something to get stressed about, but it is something to live into. If you create a document, you speak it twice a day, you listen to it, and then you just act exactly the same way you've done, nothing's going to change. Right? So and it can be a lot of small things. I had one, I'm a role model for fitness. I didn't feel like that. So when I create my document, I used to do these home workouts with this guy online. And let's say we're doing press ups, and I'd be tired at 8 or 10 or whatever the number was. I'd just stop. Well, I create my document. I'm like, I'm a role model for fitness, and I'd just do one extra. But my personal trainer, he noticed it. He's like, yeah, you're a bit more determined these days. It was just a shift in my thinking, and then living into that.
Thank you. Thank you, Ankush, so much. This was a beautiful conversation. So many golden nuggets. I got a lot out of it, and I'm sure that everybody else did too. My biggest takeaway was being is the seed of all doing, and then it's the ultimate barometer. For me, I always say litmus test, right? That's mine. I like the word I use is this is my litmus test. I use it a lot in my Course in Miracle teaching. So for me, I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about it like that. Who am I being? My document literally will show me how I'm being and what I'm doing in the world. And like, it just gave me this new because I'm kind of on again and off again with mine. So it gave me this new way to be like, oh, I can stay on it because it's a barometer. I can look at it as a way to gauge if I'm being who God created me to be, because I know that my document came from spirit. So if I'm living into that, then I'm living in who God created me to be. And if I'm not, then I'm not. So I really thank you for that awareness. I thank you for your beautiful talk. We love you, and just thank you for being here and what you're doing in the world. And you also
Thank you
gave
so
me
much, Amy.
permission to really teach the document, because I've been wanting to like bring that into my clients, but kind of scared too, because I'm like, oh, it's not my thing, but seeing that you're doing it, I'm like, oh, so I can give this to others. I can share this with others, and it's okay. So I've got lots of ideas churning about that. So thank you for that too, because I really do want to help people get their documents as well, just like you. So
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Amy. Thank you, Wolfgang and Wayne, and everyone who invited me to be here.
And next month, guys, who we're gonna have is Kai Henderson. She's amazing. She's fun. She's vivacious. Like, you don't want to miss that. And if you do miss it, please catch the replay, because it's gonna be good.
Thank you, Amy, for hosting. And well, we see each other next week in our conversation. And well, I just was in the presentation of the book yesterday with Eric, The Party, and it's an incredible book. If you haven't had a hand on the book, consider to go and purchase it. It's an incredible journey of Ankush, who he is today, like extended of what he shared today.